Okay, so we're going to go over unrolling. We're going to use this file as a way to start to unroll these objects, but first we're going to just go over just some basic unroll commands, or just the basics of unroll. I'm just going to do this with a simple box. It doesn't matter what size it is. I'm going to zoom selected around it, and I'm going to type in the command unroll. Unroll surface. For now, I'm going to just change a couple options. Explode equals, let's try explode equals no. Labels equals no. Key properties no. I'm going to select the box and hit enter. So it essentially just unrolls this box. I'm going to turn off the ISO curves. It essentially unrolls this box for me. I'm going to move this out of the way. I'm going to do unroll again. This time I'm going to say explode equals yes. And if I do explode equals yes, then it gives me all the individual pieces, which either way is perfectly fine. If you choose the option not to explode it, you could always explode it after the fact to get the individual pieces. Or if you want, you can just join it into one big piece again. You also have the option, type in unroll, to do labels. Labels equals yes. I'm going to say explode equals no, labels equals yes. And what this does is it adds labels on the unroll part that correspond to the 3D model. So just in case your model it gets a little bit more complex, you can unroll it with these labels attached to it. I'm going to move these out of the way. So for the laser cutter does not understand these surfaces. So essentially what we need to do is take one extra step to get the lines, to get line work. So I'm going to type in the command duplicate border, or dupe border. Select all these pieces, hit enter, and while they're still selected, I'm going to move them out of the way. So as I can see, what it just did was it made a copy of the border around that unrolled object. For something like this, if I were to use dupe border again, what it's giving me is essentially just the outside area, or the outside perimeter, but it's not giving me all the individual lines on the inside. And one thing I don't want to do is explode it and then select all of these and say dupe border. The main reason why is now it might look better, but if I were to select this this rectangle and this rectangle, this line overlaps. So when it's laser cutting, the way that what the laser cutter will do is it'll understand that there's actually two lines, one on top of each other, one for this rectangle and one for this rectangle, and it's going to cut through both of them. And the same thing is going to happen here. This line is going to cut once for this rectangle, and then it's going to cut again for this rectangle. So essentially, it's cutting right through the material. It's not the best thing to do. So instead of using duplicate border, I'm going to select all these. Just hold the shift and select them all. Join them. So it's back together. I still have the outside curve. And this time I'm going to use duplicate edge, or dupe edge. And I'm going to select the individual pieces on the inside. Just individual clicks on them. And then hit enter. So essentially now what I have is I have the outside perimeter and the individual lines on the inside. So now I'm going to use these two examples down here. I'm going to zoom in on ZS enter on the red object. So on the red one, if I unroll this, and I were to say explode equals no, labels equals no, if I go, it always unrolls at the origin. Because I said explode equals no, it's obviously keeping this as one piece. But because the object has parts that are folding in on itself, like this piece and this piece down here, there's no way to unroll it as one single object. So it kind of comes out as this jumbled mess. So one option is just to use unroll. Say explode equals yes. Select the red object and hit enter. So this way it gives you all of the individual pieces. And of course, if you at this point, if you type in duplicate border, it gives you all the line work that you need for laser cutting. Another option we can do is if I can go to the purple one. The purple one is the exact same object. It's only it's just joined differently. So for example, if I select this one large piece and I move this out of the way, it's actually joined as this is one piece, this is a second, and this is a third. So essentially all I did is I took this entire thing, exploded it, hold down shift to select those three pieces and join them, and then again hold down shift to select these three pieces and join them, and then I'm just selecting the rest of these pieces. And essentially what I'm doing is I'm just thinking ahead as to how this entire object is going to unroll. But now if I unroll these individually, if I type in unroll, explode equals no, labels equals no, I can unroll this as one object, and then I can do the same thing with this one. That's another object, and I can do the same thing with this one. And then that's another object. That's how I've just unrolled. So essentially I have my three pieces. And at this point what I can do, I'll go to my top view. Turn off the ISO curves. I can select all three of them and type in duplicate border. And while they're still selected, what I want to do is I want to go to my layers. And I want to make a new layer and call this cut. And give it the color of cyan. And make sure that you're actually selecting this cyan color. And I want to put those lines I just made into this layer. So change object layer. And then the other thing that I want to do is make another layer that's called score. Make this blue. And now come back into Rhino and type in duplicate edge. And now individually just click on these individual lines on the inside. Because essentially what these are going to do, press enter and put them in the score layer. And now I can move these surfaces out of the way. So essentially what the blue lines are doing is when I run this through the laser cutter, it's going to cut the perimeter. The power is going to understand that the cyan color is going to cut around the perimeter, and then the blue lines, it's just going to instead of cutting all the way through, the power's decreased. So it's just going to give just a very thin score line, so that way I can cut my material, or just bend my material. And if I wanted to take this one step further, I can take all these objects and just group them. Take those and group them. And take these and group those. So essentially all these pieces now are ready for the laser cutter. I'm going to move these out of the way and just show one more example. I'm going to unroll this object, but you're going to notice that when I do, it's going to give me all these individual pieces. Unroll surface, explode yes, labels no, and essentially it's giving me every single surface, including the top and the bottom. I could essentially say, for example, if this is the thickness of my material, I really don't need all these individual pieces. I can essentially just unroll them, delete them. Essentially, this is all I really need. Instead of having to delete all the pieces after the fact, you could always use a command where the explode icon is. So if you right-click, you do extract surface. If it says copy equals no, you select this outside surface, hit enter, and instead of exploding the entire object, it just takes that surface that you selected and it's just essentially taking it off the other object. Right? If you don't want to remove it but actually still use it, just hit Control Z a couple times so that it's back together. Go back to extract surface, copy equals yes. So it gives you that object, it just makes a copy of it, so this is still intact, but now you have a copy of this. So now if you unroll this, yep, maybe not. I do not know why this is not unrolling. Let me try the inside part. Ah, there it is. So essentially I can just take this, it's still a surface, I can just do duplicate border, move all those lines out of the way, and if I were to put all of these on the cut layer, I can essentially have this ready for laser cutting. So the next objects that we're going to unroll are these two larger objects back here, and actually getting this ready for the laser cutter.